City University Television presents the American Theater Wing Seminars. Working in the theater. This seminar, performance.
A warm welcome to the American Theater Wing's Working in the Theater Seminars, now in their 25th year, coming to you from the Graduate Center of the City University of New York. These seminars offer an insight into the realities of working in the theater. And today's seminar is devoted to performers who have arrived on Broadway from 4 different countries, yet share a common bond, love of the theater. I'm Isabel Stevenson, Chairman of the Board of the American Theater Wing, and I hope that you will enjoy and learn from today's seminar. So now, let me introduce our moderators, Pia Lindstrom, theater critic and author, and George White, Chairman of the Board of the Eugene O'Neill Theater Center. Pia?
Thank you so much, Isabel. Next to me is the Scottish actor, Iain Glen. He reminded me he was Scottish. This is an important thing because we have quite a group here of international actors. He is starring with Nicole Kidman in The Blue Room, but he's had many other parts before that. Studied at RADA, the Royal Academy of Dramatic Art. He's been in musicals, in Shakespeare, Henry V, Macbeth, Hamlet, films, Rosencrantz and Guildenstern Are Dead, Mountains of the Moon, Gorillas in the Mist, but we don't know what has prepared him for the sensation of The Blue Room. Next to him is the lovely Lea Salonga, who appeared as Kim in Miss Saigon years ago, and she's back. She has been on the stage since she was 7 years old, so although she is very young, she has a vast experience in the theater. We'll be talking to her shortly. Next to me is George White.
And next to me is Anna Manahan, who, like me, is from Waterford, but I'm from Waterford, Connecticut, and she's from Waterford, Ireland. She studied with Rea Mooney, who at the Gaiety School of Acting in Ireland, and who was also from the Abbey Theatre. And the wonderful thing is that she was nominated for a Tony for Lovers in 1968, where she co-starred with Art Carney, and then all these,
30 years.
30 years later, she won the Tony for Mag Fallon in Beauty Queen of Leenane. And it's delightful to have her here. And so. And next to her is Nicole Kidman, who is starring in The Blue Room at the moment, who is from Australia. And is also been a lot in film, and I will just tell you some of the things that she has done. You will shortly, I hope, see you in Eyes Wide Shut, directed by Stanley Kubrick, which I guess is in the editing process even as we speak, and has also won the Golden Globe Award for the Best Actress in To Die For. And it's delightful to have you here all the way from Sydney, Australia. Thank you very much. I'd like to, if I may, start by talking about training, how you got started. Actually, let's talk about how either of you got started. What is the madness that made you start this way?
On my father's side, I come from a theatrical musical family for generations. In every generations of the Manahan family, there are actors and musicians. Very normal for me to become an actor. I'm very glad, for my own sake, that I grew up and was trained in Ireland, because we have a deep ingrained love of playwrights and of the text. That was honed for me in England, particularly during my sojourn with the National Theatre in England, because in Ireland, the text is very important, but we play the mood and the passion. And I find in America they do the same thing. In England, they do that, but they're intensely interested in the text. And I learned there how to investigate the text. And that is one of the greatest riches of my life. And I wish I could give it to young American performers who act before the line, after the line, but not on the line. If I were young enough, I would start a crusade. I think there's great talent in this country, but oh, I want so very dearly to impress that upon acting students. Please, please, play the play, play the text, play the character. Stop acting all around the lines.
Well, good. Nicole, is that Well, that's it. That's the end of the seminar.
Yeah. Thank you, Anna. We can all go home.
Nicole, what about Australia? Your traditions, of course, there are many, many Irish traditions in Australia, but also, obviously, British traditions, English traditions. Were you brought up with that? When you trained, I know you trained at, what is it, the National...
Australian Theatre for Young People is where I trained.
And is that how, were you trained like Anna, or do you play differently?
We basically studied all sorts of techniques when we were at, when I was at drama school. You study the Meisner, you study the method, you study everything. And I think out of that, as an actor, you come up with your own craft. Whatever it is, you take a little from, or for me, I could take a little from everything. And somehow you manage to do it.
Well, of course, Australia has a different, I mean, it's like the United States, is a society of, a colonial society that took from the tradition of Irish and British theatre and Americans all there. It wasn't ingrown, or is it? I mean, in terms of a tradition. Is there an Australian theatre tradition as such?
No, I mean, I think that Australia as a country is made up of so many different people from so many different nations, and therefore we accept many, many different things. We have. You said you just went to Sydney prior to coming to New York, didn't you? We have a lot of travelling theatre companies that come through Sydney. We have a festival in Adelaide, which is in South Australia, which is a wonderful theatre festival, sort of on a par, I think, with the Edinburgh Festival. And I think there's a great acceptance and a great love of the theatre and of actors in Australia.
Is that true in the Philippines as well?
Well, in the Philippines, it seems to be more of a movie-going public than a theatre-going public. So there isn't exactly a theatre tradition, but there are a few theatre companies in the Philippines. That's where I was trained when I was 7. And I think it's more of you're trained with the work ethic, you're trained with the discipline, in whatever show that you're pushed in or auditioned for, that's what happens.
Is there a style of acting, Stanislavski or Meisner?
I think it's definitely more, it seems to be more American than it is British. That's what it seems to be. At least in my experience, that's what it felt like.
And in Scotland?
Well, we were always dominated by the English.
How did you break free?
I think we entirely did, but no, there's prospect now of an independent Scotland.
Yeah.
So no, our tradition is very tied up with the British.
England. And you studied the traditional styles of acting.
Yeah. I mean, connection with what you were saying is really the British training at drama school. I went to RADA. Is very language-based. You know, it's all about studying the text and finding your performance from the text. I agree wholeheartedly with what you were saying, and I think you especially get that from Shakespeare. You know, Shakespeare wrote such articulate characters, such articulate people, and there's a tendency now, especially with the influence of film, that people become less and less articulate, you know.
Oh, Ian, I so agree with you. I saw a production in Dublin of one of the Shakespearean plays, it was Twelfth Night or something, and it was so highly praised. It looked so wonderful, and the gimmicks and everything. And the critics said, but if you want to hear the text, don't go. And I thought, why would you put on a Shakespearean play if the text wasn't worth hearing? It is the word that lasts. Directors come and go, different styles come and go, but the text remains. Shakespeare has remained for hundreds of years. Why not put on something else? Why destroy his text? I don't agree with it at all.
Isn't the American argument that the American style is more emotional?
Well, I think it may be. I think it's a desire for spontaneity, really. I mean, the method was something that tried to insist on a reality and a spontaneity, which I think is absolutely valid and really useful, and all that can be fed into the British training. If the British have a tendency, it will be towards too much demonstration, and over-respect. You can have over-respect for the language as well, so that kind of gets in the way, and you lose a kind of a presentness, which is really what is fundamental to empathy from an audience watching a play or watching a film. They want to be transported into the present, into a different relationship that's happening, that they can, sympathize with. And I mean, it's really, Shakespeare wrote his subtext. People spoke in soliloquy, in monologue, and shared their subtext. The whole method is about looking beneath the line. And the danger in that is that people, as I say, become less than like, this kind of grunt and groan, and you can't simply ask for a cup of coffee without,
It's like what David Mamet calls huff acting. It's kind of
Without tearing you.
Do you have coffee? And you think, just say the line, just say it hard for a cup of coffee. Be articulate. And people, I think, are much more articulate in real life than they are on film. I mean, look at us, we can hum and haw a bit, but basically we get our sentences roughly right and we express ourselves.
There is a big difference between film acting and stage acting. What was the difference for you?
I don't think there is a huge... I think that acting is acting. Acting is truth. And what you're trying to achieve is truth. So once you say, oh, well, there's a huge difference between film and theatre, then I don't quite know what that means. I think ultimately
in a close-up, you just raise an eyebrow. On a stage,
yeah, I mean, obviously, technically, there's different things, because on a stage you have to be heard, and the concentration that's required is different to, say, film, because on film you're required for a certain amount of time, for maybe half an hour, where it's very intense and everyone's focused on you, and then you have to go away and you have to sustain it for another, say, 6 hours while they light another scene, and then you come on and you do for that particular amount of time. So it requires a different energy and a different concentration. Whereas on stage, the minute you step on, you've got to be completely concentrated until the minute you walk off. And that's, technically that's fantastic to be able to do both, because I think it challenges you both ways. You can become very lazy when you're working on film. But I do think that ultimately, acting is about truth and about text and about all those things, whether you're on film, whether you're on stage. And I think once you start saying, well, we've got to be bigger, or we've got to be for stage, then it starts to become acting, which is not something that I enjoy watching. I think you're looking to believe. And whether that's on film or whether that's on stage, you want to believe.
I think the great thing is that they complement one another really well. I think there are really useful things that you glean from film that you can bring to theatre and vice versa, and it is dangerous to kind of create a divide. And as I say, spontaneity is a really useful thing to bring into the theatre. I see too much dead theatre, I see stuff that seems archaic or seems remote or seems like, it looks like it was said exactly the same way yesterday. That, as I say, doesn't transport you as it should. In the same way that I think theatre and training for theatre, doing theatre shows, gives you a structure as an actor. Through a piece you get used to looking at a text as a whole, dealing with it thematically, looking at where your role falls within that, and shaping it, creating arcs for your character. And for film, you're in this very kind of sporadic, bitty process, and it's really useful to kind of have the objective sense of the whole. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, well, that's exactly, because one is obviously on a stage piece, it's linear. You go from A to B.
Yeah.
And this way, because film, they're shooting all over, and you say, wait a minute, oh, this is the scene in which I do.
That's right.
What happened before this, which we shot 3 days ago?
Exactly.
Also, on film, you are at the mercy of the editor and the director.
Yeah.
And on stage, you're
That's a
not.
very good point.
No.
I think one of the wonderful things about theatre is that at some point the audience become one. They come in as different people. And the great thing is at the point where they become an audience, and the thoughts that you're thinking, they're thinking with you. The tears you shed, the laughter you feel, that this is with you. And in that dead silence, they're with you. And I have a feeling, in my own belief, that's a little touch of eternity. Where there is that union, and you'll never get that in a studio.
Yeah.
You've gone away.
Which is an experience you live through each night with people. That's what theatre means to me.
It's wonderful, special.
You went away from Miss Saigon and now you've come back.
Yeah.
How has it changed
It's
for
more
you?
fun now for me.
Why?
Okay, when I first did the part in London, I guess I had lived quite, not exactly a sheltered life, but certainly not a very experienced one as a person. I was 18 when I started in the part, and I'd never had a serious love relationship at the time. And it affected the way everything I did on stage. I was the stiffest thing in rehearsal. You could sweep the floor with me if you held me upside down. So I had a leading man who said, "You have to trust me. You have to trust me." I had the director tell me, "You have to do this. You have to do this. You have to do this." And it seemed to have carried all the way when I came here. Although I got more used to doing things on stage, but now it's just any night anything can happen, and you just don't know what kind of chemistry you and your leading man and everybody else in the show, and even with the audience, you don't know what kind of chemistry is going to, you know, pop up in this pressure cooker in this particular night. But I had a question for you, because I didn't do as many straight plays, say, as you have. It's mostly been a musical theater experience with Les Mis and with Saigon. Do you find that when you sing every day in the same tempo, the text falling in the exact same spots every night, how do you find your own spontaneity within the very set?
Yeah, it is quite rigorous, the you know, the constraint within singing, and it is quite hard. I find it difficult to do, and it kind of got in the way of my imagination, really. But I think there is room still within music, within singing, to find spontaneity, in the same way that Shakespeare has a kind of rigorousness to it as well. There's a text that you have to really respect, and the iambic pentameter kind of insists on certain things. But even so, within that, I think if the thoughts are fresh and the emotion is real and is present for you, then it will come out differently. It will kind of.
Could I ask a question of my fellow actors? That in this particular role I play, much of the time I'm deeply hated by the audience. And I find it has an effect on me. I do not believe in going out and playing a part like that and trying. You must not look for the sympathy of the audience. If they give it, fine. But I find sometimes people come on the street and they say, "I hate you." I haven't hated anyone since I hated Iago. And then, I'm quite, well, my friends tell me I'm quite a pleasant one. And I find it hard to take in my own persona.
Right.
I feel I want to go out and say at the end, "Look, I really am not like this woman. Well, I think I am."
Well, when you see the poster, that's what happens. The first impression you get.
Yes,
Terrible waves of hate.
I know. But you must feel reassured at the curtain call. Must kind of take
you
the
smile
sting
at
out of it.
Well, when you go out on the street, there's someone waiting
They're
for you.
waiting for you to kind of. With a poker. Yeah, it'd be a sort of mixed
With a poker,
feeling.
yeah.
You know, it's very complimentary as well.
Well, yes, it is,
In a way.
but it just hits your subconscious.
I know, kind of. You
I'll
just
have a
wait.
chat with the pal. When you're playing heroines and Nicole,
and I'm dead at the end of the show.
She's dead too.
Dead at the end of the show.
Could I ask about how you work with an English audience or an Australian audience or an American audience? How do you change your craft, or is the craft always there and you just adjust to the audience's
I don't
reaction?
think you really adjust to the audience. You just play it as truthfully as you possibly can, and then just hope for the best.
Would you say that's it?
That's it.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah, I think there's a danger. There's a danger in trying to assess what's going on with an audience and affecting what you get up to. The kind of film have got into that a bit, haven't they? They sort of they will present a film to a kind of audience, and the audience will write notes about what they thought it was like, and then they will kind of go back and re-edit or change things according to that. But so within that, I think you can't kind of. But that being said, you know, when you feel that that's the whole thing you mentioning about every single night. There's a new audience, and they create a different impulse in you, and they're telling you different things on a moment-by-moment basis. They're bored, they're getting restless, they really enjoyed that. They let you know.
What do you do when you feel that they are bored and restless?
I think you subliminally, it does affect you. It does affect you, and it can affect you in bad ways, and it can affect you in good ways. Sometimes in bad ways you start to feel they're going, so you work it too hard, you start overstating, you force things, or, you know, I mean, for us especially, we have a fair amount of comedy in the show that we're doing. And we always try and remind ourselves, however the audience, whether they're very openly responsive to it or quite subdued, to try and stay true to what it is that we're up to, you know, and not feel...
We always say to each other before we go on stage, though, our thing is, listen. We always do it just before we go on.
How do you do? Because you know, in a sense, playing so many different characters, which is sort of fun, rather than the same. I would think that would help you keep it fresh for yourself, which when I thought was very, you know, but does that help you? I mean, you're moving from character to character. So each one has a different dynamic, which makes your performance so particularly, both of your performances so rich. And that's
I mean, there's benefits to it. There's also things where I'm now craving to do one character, or to see her all the way through, because you're getting just snippets. You're just getting a tiny moment of each person's life, and I'm dying now to do something like Miss Julie, where you get to do the whole, follow her all the way through, because even though it's very exciting as an actor to constantly be changing, and we've been doing it now for almost 6 months now, we're both sort of saying, okay, it'd be so interesting to explore one of these characters all the way through. And of course, when you're preparing, for both of us, we had to prepare their pasts for the 5 different characters, so that we knew exactly who they were and where they came from.
And did you create that with the director, the past with the director, or did you do that, I mean, with that
guidance? We did it separately, and then we did it, then we all came in and we sort of talked about the characters, and we worked on them. We had a 6-week rehearsal, which is a week longer than what you usually get on a play like this. Usually you get 5 weeks. And I begged for that extra week.
Is there a value to your film career to having appeared on Broadway and in London? Do you think this is...
I don't know.
I mean, I would speculate
the reason I've seen theatre since I was 3 years old. I was taken to pantomimes in Australia by my parents. Which you don't really have pantomimes in America, do you? No, but as a child, they're extraordinary, because you go and you sit, and I was never taken to films, I was always taken to theatre. And I was taken to ballet, because I started off doing ballet, and then taken to pantomimes, and I loved them. I remember sitting there watching, you know, all these men dressed up as women pretending to be Cinderella, and and there's such wit and such enjoyment. And I think that's why I wanted to become an actor, is because I saw them all having such fun.
Did you study in Australia?
Did I study? Anna wants to say that too.
No.
Did I study? Yes, I started. I actually started in mime. Because my mother was worked my whole life, and so did my father. So I was what you call a latchkey kid, where you would go. You know, I'd take my sister home from school and let myself in. And wait till my parents got home from work, which was usually around 5 or 6 o'clock at night. And instead of, my mother enrolled me in this class across the way from our school, which was a mime class when I was 10. And that's and we would do mime, and then we started doing street theatre. And then that segued into me begging to go to a drama school on the weekends. And that's how I started.
Marcel Marceau is coming to town.
Yeah, one of the heroes.
Going back to what you said, I think that in a case like the Beauty Queen of Leenane, in which Martin McDonagh has created his own, what we call McDonagh speak. His father was a Gaelic speaker, and that his first language is Gaelic. Therefore, Martin, I think, heard English spoken by somebody whose language was not English. So that he has this particular kind of dialect that is his own, that's Irish, but is peculiarly his own. In Irish, we would say, Thomini Yasav, which means I'm standing, but the literal English translation is, I am in my standing. Now, I say in the play, another bit of turf on the fire put, which is the literal translation. Now, we were instructed, and this is the difference, in coming to England, Australia, the United States, to remember that it's a difficult dialect, and to be clearer in the way we spoke it, and to cut down our accents, because people had to listen to this.
How do you know how to do that? How do you know how to do that?
I think you think it. I think if you think clarity, you will be clear. Would you agree with that?
I do.
It's a mental thing. You don't actually do anything. You just think it.
That's good. There was one thing I wanted to get into, which is about emotion, too, we were talking about. And Lea, you, having so much experience in the musical realm, any musical, I think you would agree, that's worth its salt, only has songs where things get so exciting and so difficult and so emotional that you cannot speak anymore, you must sing. I would hope. And better sing well, too.
Oh, yeah.
Does that help keep, I mean, how do you deal, obviously, if you're so emotional, you can't sing because
Exactly.
But does that help keep, how do you deal with that? I mean, projecting that emotion in a song?
Oh, I don't know. I really don't know how. We just here's the text. So I try to think of the lyrics, not so much as they're sung, but how they're said. So I try to also consciously and unconsciously work against the beat of the music. For example, there's one line in Saigon where it's like, no, he's coming to us tonight. Pack your things, get yourself, wala da 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 da. And the rhythm is just there. So I try to not say it that way. I try to say it first and then try to fit it into the melody. Because whenever I saw the show after I left, I'd be like this. And I feel like strangling whoever's doing it up on stage, thinking, you don't have to sing on the beat all the time, because sometimes then it sounds artificial, it sounds too sung. And in a through-sung musical, where the delineation between the lines and the songs is it's not a huge delineation, it's not like a book musical where you burst into song and then you talk again. Here you talk and sing at the same time. Yeah. I think I learned a lot of that from Jonathan Pryce when he was doing the show, seeing the way he would work.
Yes, because
as an actor
he's not
doing a musical.
He's not a musical actor.
Yeah, and then watching the singers work in a musical. So it's easy to get the emotions. You get really lazy though once the songs start, like you are sun. Everything is just on the beat, and the music just carries you.
How do you react to the different audiences?
How do I react to different Well, there are some audiences that are so every night, and then they just standing ovation like they're like wires.
Obviously, you react well to that.
And there's some nights when a lot of the company feels that they don't work as hard, but the reaction of the audience is just overwhelming. And there are some nights when we feel that we work a lot and we're exhausted at the end of the show. And then the audience is just so, you know? So it happens.
How do you account for that?
I don't know. I don't think it's our fault.
I'm sure not.
I do not take responsibility.
The bad audience.
Take responsibility. Sometimes it's the weather. Sometimes you're like, I'd like to think that people's coats are stuck in the seats so they can't get it. But sometimes it's just, you know, sometimes it's a bad day that affects everybody, both on that side of the stage and on this side.
I think it's a wonderful mystery.
I think don't know what it is.
No, if you could answer that question, then you kind of lose the whole nature of theatre. That why audiences are different and why they react in different ways, and the makeup of it is can be so subtly or
Friday night at
radically
Les Mis,
different.
though, was like.
What do you do when you don't get the reaction that you normally do with an audience?
Well, in Les Mis, they called Friday night, it's steak and. Was it steak and beer? It was steak and something night. That's why they couldn't get up. That's why they were just so full for dinner.
I want to know
what about you?
So,
Just as I say, you just try and stay true to what you're doing. There's a very healthy influence that an audience has on you, but there's an unhealthy influence as well. And if they're very quiet, then you can try and force things in the wrong way. So the instinct is basically just to keep listening and keep the reality.
How did your training at RADA prepare you to do a naked cartwheel?
That was the second term we did naked cartwheels. So I was seriously...
I thought you were very brave.
Get badly hurt.
Yeah, no, we did naked handstands.
Did they tell you that when they cast you?
What?
That you'd have to do this? Did they
He improvised that.
Oh, you made it up yourself?
It wasn't in the script.
That was his input.
All that RADA
But it's
background.
effective. So all that classical training.
But that comes from having a great rehearsal process, actually, because I think it's so daring of Iain to do that. And I think it's so important, and it's awful when people try now to say, oh, we can rehearse it in 4 weeks, we can rehearse it in 3 weeks, quick. So rehearsal is meant to explore the text, is meant to explore each other, is meant to discover the play together, and it's also about discovering your director, your other actors, and that's the beauty of being an actor, is that you become very close to people in a very short amount of time, and in that rehearsal process is when it happens. And if you try to and I think it's the same on film, where they say, "Oh, come in and you say when you're talking to your agent, well, how long are they going to plan on rehearsing this?" They, "Oh, no, well, they're going to rehearse for 5 days." You go, "Count me out. I'm not interested," because unless you have that rehearsal time, I don't think you find the magic.
And it affects, subconsciously. If you're in a 4-week rehearsal process. I mean, I've not really thought about this before, but I'm sure it's true that as an actor, there are certain things that you have to go through to get up and to be ready to be roughly in the right place at the end of the day. If you've got 4 weeks rehearsal, you'll start learning those lines that bit quicker. Just a forced memorizing of a text, forced learning of the lines affects the way you do it. It's really, I hate learning lines. I like to read it.
Well, isn't it true that Judi Dench, she doesn't learn a line before she comes to
I read that.
That's right.
I don't either.
Right.
Because I think that it depends so much on your fellow actors, what's going to be fed to you.
Yeah.
You can't get any sort of preconceived idea.
Yeah.
But I wondered if you have this experience, which I find terrifying. When I go to do a new play, I'm very anxious to know about the people I'm going to work with, because I want to know if I can share, if there are people who are generous, if we can share emotions and feelings. It's a very painful time, the early time in rehearsal. You're with maybe strangers, and you're trying to communicate, and you want to know about this. And I find this quite frightening. After the thrill, maybe, I want to play this role, and then, oh my God, who's in it? And keep asking your friends, what are they like? Are they nice? Are they nice? Are they nice people?
No.
She's a bit... or he's, and then some people you heard are not the nicest people. They've had a bad sales talk with somebody.
It is funny that, because I think, in training and preparation for it, you really focus on, the way you can prepare as an actor and different methods and, things you can sort of focus on. And actually the best thing to get good work out of yourself, out of the people around you, are just people whose taste you really trust, who you really believe in, to be in a relaxed atmosphere with a director who's coming up with ideas that are better than yours, someone who you look at and you're acting with, and you think, I just believe everything that you're saying. You can go anywhere and I trust what it is, and then good things will happen.
That's true.
Now, did you two know each other before Blue Room?
We met for dinner with Sam Mendes, the director, the night before we had to start rehearsals.
Okay.
And Sam was wonderful like that, because the way he cast it was he cast me and he cast Iain both separately, neither of us having a say in who was going to be playing opposite, and we arrived and he said, "Don't worry, you'll have great chemistry," and that was it.
But he knew.
And I trust, he put it together, which I think you have to trust the director to do.
Yeah.
And I remember we sat at dinner that night and we both went, 5 characters.
I think I'm suited to one. But
And I said, have you learnt any of your lines? And I of course, I'd learnt everything. And then as soon as we got to rehearsals, I went, forget it. No, I can't remember a thing. And then we rewrote a lot of it anyway. So next time I will not learn a line when I go into, before I go into rehearsal. Because it actually proved to be more difficult because I had to unlearn stuff.
And it's constraining.
But the reason I did it was because I'm obviously Australian. I had to play French and a number of different English characters. And so I had a lot of attention on the accents. And I wanted to make sure that if I was going to appear on the London stage that I was going to be credible with my accent.
And it's quite terrifying to appear on the London stage.
Yes, it is.
I mean, it's terrifying to appear on Broadway, too. I'm equally terrifying. but it's terrifying in a different way.
It is. I found Broadway far more
terrifying to be on stage on Broadway?
Why is it terrifying on Broadway? Not the audiences are wonderful. They love actors. It's used to be the 6 butchers of Broadway, but they can close shows in a blink. You know, it's quite frightening.
Well, when you're talking about terrifying, the thing that we let's talk about real terror, because we began to talk about this before. Let's talk about stage fright. And how do you deal with that? And I mean, you are subject, aren't you all, to stage fright, which is a real malady and a real virus. And we talked a little bit before the show about it was Larry Olivier who helped you get over that.
I think that we all have. I think if actors talk to one another, they will find that there's been a period in their lives in which they've suffered stage fright. And mine hit me in 1979, and it was painful and it was terrifying. And I would break out in a perspiration on stage. And it was Laurence Olivier. It was an hour-long program he gave about his life. And he described how for 12 years he suffered stage fright so badly. Some of the great performances of his life were performed during that time. It was so bad he had to have friends standing in the wings that he could look at, so that he knew they were there. And when I heard that, it helped me. And when I got over it was somewhere in the mid-80s. I was doing a solo performance at Harvard in New York, wherever.
Terrible place.
At Harvard. And I had very difficult stuff, including a lot of James Joyce, Finnegan's Wake, which is incredibly dense. And as the music started, I thought I was going to say, ladies and gentlemen, I apologize. I can't perform this evening. But the light hit me and the music started, and I started. And I kept on for 2 hours, and that was the beginning of my road back. So I don't know if any of you have any stories like that.
I've not really. It's because I'm.
Well, you're years younger than me.
I know. Well, I know it's coming round the corner. But so far, I've not really had stage fright. You get petrified. Everyone gets scared, don't they?
What's the difference in the English audience and the American audience? You've done the play both there and here for a limited, quite a time.
Do they laugh at different places?
How can you describe the difference in reaction?
They laugh.
Yeah, there's different. I mean, obviously, the humour plays differently in the different countries, doesn't it? But also, I think because we're on a different stage, the Donmar was very small and very intimate, and it had 3 sides to it. And then the Court Theatre here on Broadway is obviously much larger, and it's Pross Arch, so you just have, I mean, it plays differently just in terms of the actual theatre, which you kept telling me, oh, it'll be different because it'll be a different theatre, and I never, and now I've experienced it. But back to stage fright, I also I mean, I haven't had stage fright. Before, on Broadway, I was far more terrified than I was in England. I think that was to do with the capacity of the audience, but also, yes, it just hits you at different times. But I do think there's something, I love the adrenaline. I love the fear. If I'm not frightened before I go on, I usually don't give a good performance.
But
there's
Nicole,
something about
nerves.
No, I
Nerves
know.
are different to terror.
Yeah, it's just yes. No, I haven't had the terror, but I do. But just in terms of just
that's fine.
going off on a tangent, I think there's something wonderful about the adrenaline. It feeds your performance. It somehow, for me, I can access my emotions more easily when I'm in a state of...
I think that's part of live theater. It's an exhilaration.
Yeah, and it helps me. So I prefer to get nervous and be... to have a problem before I go on, so that it will feed into.
I found out that the older I got, the more it was there. Because when you're like 7 years old, you just go on, you do it, and you get off, and you don't think about it. You don't think about the audience. But especially doing this with a lot of pressure that was on Miss Saigon when we first opened, and even now. Once the music starts, and it's like, then it starts, and it's like, oh God, I hope I remember the first line out of my mouth. Once the first line comes out, usually I'm fine. It's the first one. And it's really funny to say now, at my age. I'm 17, and I'm new here today. And all of us get a little giggle out of it now.
Maybe this is a moment, Isabel, for you to tell us a little bit about the American Theater Wing.
Oh, you're talking about my absolute favorite suggestion. Thank you, Thea. The American Theater Wing is an organization whose year-round programs are dedicated to serving the theater and the community and exciting young people's minds and hopes, ultimately developing new audiences. You no doubt are familiar with the Wing's prestigious Tony Awards, which we present each year on television with the League of American Theaters and Producers and CBS. One of my favorite Wing efforts, though, is our Introduction to Broadway program, which brings, we started 7 years ago, and it has now enabled more than 70,000 New York City high school students to attend Broadway shows, many for the very first time. The American Theater Wing is a wonderful organization, and it's theater in schools where theater professionals like these go directly into the classrooms to work with and talk to students about working in the theater, and the wide range of job opportunities they will find is another part of what we do year-round. In addition, our hospital program brings talent from Broadway, off-Broadway, and the cabaret world to brighten the lives of patients in nursing homes, veterans hospitals, children's wards, and AIDS centers. We also have a grant and scholarship program, which helps off- and off-Broadway theater companies. The qualifications for these grants is the same as for our Tony Awards, excellence in the craft of theater. Our scholarships help talented students continue their studies at accredited drama schools. We're very proud of the work we do and are grateful to everyone who supports the activities of the American Theater Wing, such as the people that are on the seminars today. And so now, having let me say that about my favorite subject, the American Theater Wing, please, George, start talking a little bit more about it.
Well, we were thinking of audiences, and the only thing I can do is also leave you, in a sense, with a famous statement by our humorist Don Marquis, who we were talking about audiences, and there was a boastful playwright who once said, "I had that audience glued to their seats." And he said, "Clever of you to think of it." I do like to, there is something else which is interesting for all of you, that there's a little bit intriguing, because so much, here you are from 4 different countries, and so much in the last, in some cases 20, some cases 30, some cases 10 years, so much has changed politically within your countries. Perhaps when you mentioned about Scotland, of course, now there really is a movement for Scottish freedom or not being linked. Lea, you grew up under the Marcoses in the Philippines, and of course, fortunately, you're too young to remember Australia before the Whitlams, but it was a very, very much more rigid society. And Anna, you grew up in Ireland before Bishop O'Casey was, caught, shall we say. So the church was very, very strong in your societies. I wondered if you might all talk a little bit about what it was like before and what that freedom has done theatrically, artistically for your countries. Maybe you know, because the Marcuses perhaps were the most rigid.
Well, they were, I guess they were quite rigid, but being very young and working in a theater company where the productions were mostly Western productions anyway, it didn't seem to affect me so much growing up because, you know, we were too young. And I was only 15 when they fled to Hawaii. However, there were productions that Repertory Philippines wanted to do. They wanted to do Evita. Unfortunately, though, it was not allowed. And only after the Marcos regime were they able to finally stage it, and they've staged it twice in the Philippines, much to the audience's delight and contentment, much to the actors, you know, getting their wishes fulfilled. So I think now there's more of an artistic freedom in terms of the films that are being produced. But sometimes some people tend to take the freedom a little too far, and some of the stuff. Well, some of the films that have been coming out in the Philippines have been on the more lascivious side, which I think under more strict, I guess under more strict supervision would not be allowed to come out. There's artistic nudity and there's lascivious, you know, stuff, and the lascivious stuff is I can't take it.
Interesting. What about Ireland? Because we were talking, you know, there's been a tremendous explosion of Irish theatre. Do you think that is because of a kind of letting up of the church?
No, I don't think that at all. The church and state have separated in Ireland, but Ireland was always rich with the Abbey Theatre, the Gate. We never had restrictions like that, unless it was something, it was nothing to do with the church, unless it was like, I played in the Roast Tattoo, and when the condom was dropped on the stage, a woman complained to the police. It was an obscene act, and we ended up in court. Nothing to do with the church. What has changed in Ireland, there's a great burgeoning of writing and talent and that. But I think that comes also from subsidy by the Arts Council, by the encouragement of young talent. What is changing in Ireland is a prosperous country now, the Celtic Tiger, and hopefully the North of Ireland and the Republic of Ireland are coming closer. Those are the big changes. Artistically, we were always growing. I think that's true.
Nicole, you appeared in London, and as you know, in New York, there's a great discussion about foreign actors coming here with Actors' Equity and taking parts. Did you notice anything like that in London? Was there any question about not using a British actress?
No. I'm Australian, so I actually have dual citizenship.
Oh, okay. So you
I
didn't
have American citizenship and I have Australian citizenship. So I fall into a very odd category.
You're lucky, then.
Yeah,
you can do it.
But, no, but I think that the Donma agreed to have an American come and appear at the Donma. That was part of the exchange.
And now here we have we have all of you coming here, taking parts. There are, of course, American actors who say, it's not fair.
Well, somebody has a year, 3 months in which they can play in England in exchange for me. I don't know who's got it. But somebody has the freedom to do that.
Somebody gets
same with me as well.
With Ian.
What is the difference in audience reaction from London to here? Can you, and then Anna, I'm going to ask you as well. Can you?
You answer that, Ian. Florian's face looking blank.
People.
Yes, no, I suppose with the, no, I think probably,
I'm not asking about the cartwheel.
No, the Americans. No, I think the Americans they seem to love the narrative.
That's what David
humor.
Hare said.
Yeah, that's what David Hare said, and I think they're very bright and sharp to that. So any reference within the play about something that's sort of taken place refers back to something the character has been involved in or refers forward. They love that. They're very sharp to the narrative humor, and certain kind of British kind of ironies or. You know, a student has a completely different sort of sense to an American
an English
public
student.
Yeah, to it. Yes,
an American student.
Yes, and I play
or the aristocrat.
Yeah, or an aristocrat. They have different associations, and so some things improve, and some things it's very interesting. I think it'd be fascinating to do a tour within the play of the world, and you know, and see
Change
the
the
different
sensibilities
reaction.
as you
Yeah,
go.
Do they have to tell
fun.
British audiences not to unwrap their cough drops like they do in the theater now? I keep hearing that
No.
announcement.
I think that's quite clever, isn't it? Yeah.
Are the audiences quieter in England, do you think?
I think they
better
probably
behave?
are. I think they probably are slightly, but
we were in a very
but we were in a small
space.
theatre.
So
where,
literally our space was 2 rows.
What
and
about
that's it.
coughing?
So, and people could reach out and touch us.
Mm.
So you felt like you were in the room with us.
But you think in sort of previous centuries, audiences used to, you know, they would be much more...
They were on the stage.
They were on the
Jesus.
stage,
Right.
vocal and chatting, and, you know, there'd be other people going through selling things, and, you know, there's something quite nice about that, really.
Well, I've heard about conductors stopping concerts because the audience was so
Really?
noisy, coughing.
No, I think one can get too
Well, I
reverential.
cut my knee once in one of the scenes on the stage, and I heard the woman in the front row say, "Oh, she's bleeding!" I thought, oh, they're going to hand me a tissue or something. It was pouring down my leg. I just kept going on.
You had to pretend it was part
But
of
we've
the
also
act.
had, we did have some people, we've had different, usually on a Friday or a Saturday night we get our raucous audiences, and we've had men coming and yelling at him.
Yeah.
Yes, yes.
Men yelling at
Mel yelling. Do another
Oh, no, I'm actually going to...
put it on.
They said they can't understand why the student isn't able to consummate his love for the married woman. So they're like, go on, get on with it. Go on. She's like, yes, Nicole Kidman, get on.
Maybe they think they're watching television. They can just talk to the screen.
Please, I'm going through trauma here. Don't jeer me
just
like
go.
a bear.
I think, oh my
No.
gosh, help.
What is
The
the
other-
difference in the audience's reaction from London to here? Can you tell? Have you changed pace at all? Have you?
I find this is a very unique play. It's been a great success worldwide. It's been translated into 22 different languages. It's been done in Iceland, it's been done in Japan, Hungary, Germany. And the thing that I found extraordinary, because I never found it in any other play, they're all the same. Everyone is gasping. It's not done. You think the West End, you think the Broadway, they're saying, "Oh, no, don't give it to her, stop, oh!" And this is going on. And the basic thing, of course, is there's the mother and daughter, and everyone has a mother. So the theme is universal. It has made Martin McDonagh, whom I met at 25 years of age, without a penny in his pocket, a millionaire.
Good heavens.
It's wonderful.
We actors haven't become millionaires.
Somebody.
Well, you know,
I got the Tony, though.
but, you know, there is. Yeah, that's one. And of course that was full blown from, in a sense, of Martin McDonagh's head. Now we go to the Blue Room, and how were you? Have you seen the Schnitzler? Have you seen the Ronde? Have you? How much was your how much were you influenced, or how much did you try to negate that?
I didn't really look at it. I remember looking at the film of it about three-quarters of the way through rehearsal, but David and Sam, I think, discouraged us from looking at the original play.
I read the original.
Yeah, right. Yeah. I don't think it's kind of... David writes very distinct characters. He's very good at giving different voices to his characters, and I think it was, I think it was one of those projects where really everything was contained within it. I think it was possible to not really read around it too much, not read background or, certain amounts of research to do with the kind of different occupations of the characters that one was playing, but I didn't feel obliged in any way to look at the original and see what was... I mean, he had released the original had a notoriously bad track record, especially in Britain.
Really, I
And,
didn't know.
yeah, and so, I think we certainly weren't encouraged, and I didn't feel the urge to study it to see if there would be anything.
Do you dislike any of the 5 men you play?
No.
Do you always have to find something you like, even if they're
Yeah.
others?
Yes, I think there are probably certain human beings who go around despising themselves, but I think on the whole, your actor's relationship to the characters you're playing is the same as a person's relation to himself, and on the whole, I think people have to believe, otherwise they'll go insane, that there's nice things about them.
Well, and of course you like your character despite what people say to you in the street?
Oh, you must like the character you're playing, and I feel very defensive on her behalf. You have to defend your character, yes.
I kept thinking, well, who on earth were you talking about?
What is the defense?
You're
Quick,
possibly
what's the defense?
She's an old, possessive, lonely woman who wants to keep the daughter by her side. She is selfish, but also there's the vulnerability of old age, and in living in this bleak cottage in the wilds of the west of Ireland. I wouldn't like to be 70 and living there on my own. It's so wild, like Scotland, parts of Scotland. And so
Thank
yes,
you
I can.
so much. There never seems to be enough time to say all the things that need to be said and all the things that these wonderful panelists have to be able to say to you. But unfortunately, it isn't enough time, and so I just have to tell you that this has been the American Theatre Wing seminar on working in the theatre, and it's coming to you from the Graduate Center of the City University of New York. I want to thank this wonderful, wonderful panel who have shared their knowledge and their experiences and their time as they come from such diverse backgrounds and countries. Pia Lindstrom and George White, I want to thank you for your very kind participation, and I am so happy that you are all here, and I'm delighted that you have come to watch Working in the Theater seminars, which are coming to you from the Graduate Center of the City University of New York. Thank you very much for coming.